Hello, my name is Eric Sullivan, and I am one of the founders of Ballard for Bernie. We're here in Seattle, and we do all kinds of activities for the Bernie Sanders campaign. Right now, though, I'm going to be talking about a brand new initiative that has been introduced in the state of Washington that is very much in line with what Ballard for Bernie does, but is something that appeals to both Democrats and Republicans. This is an anti-corruption, increased democracy participation initiative called Integrity Washington. It's called I-1464. Okay, we'll be talking about the nuts and bolts of this ballot initiative. So it just hit the streets about less than 2 weeks ago, and we're looking to get over 300,000 signatures. We will get them by July 8th. That is the cutoff point for the number of signatures that we need to submit to the Washington State Secretary of State, so that this can be on the November ballot for general voting. Okay, this I-1464 initiative involves four main things. One is to increase transparency. It ends secret money and requires political ads to disclose who is really paying for them, which is not something that is a very not strong at this time in our state level political advertising in terms of who's actually paying for the ad. Also, it makes information about political campaigns and lobbyists and government transparent, puts it into a searchable database called the Public Disclosure Commission on a website, which currently the state of Washington doesn't have. Kind of backing up for a second, I probably should have said this right at the outset. The Center for Public Integrity did a study they published it last November, rating all 50 states, gave them a corruption grade, and the state of Washington got a D+. And that's not okay. I mean, it wasn't the worst, but it's certainly, we fall kind of in the level of mediocrity, and that's not something that I would have expected. So we're a D+ right now in terms of our corruption. One of the main things that hurt that rating was the lack of transparency. So I-1464 definitely addresses that in terms of advertising, but also puts campaign funding and lobbying and government activity up on the Public Disclosure Commission website. Okay, so increased transparency. That's the first of the four main issues that get tackled by this initiative. The other thing, which is pretty important, the second thing is that it empowers small donors in political campaigns. This essentially will give everybody a voice by creating what's known as a voluntary campaign finance program. It's been called a democracy credit or democracy voucher. This is something that the city of Seattle actually just approved last fall on municipal elections, where as a tax credit, citizens can access these democracy credits to give them to campaigns that they want, that politicians that their views are in line with theirs. This happens in the form of $50 increments, so it's a total of $150 that we would get as individuals as a tax credit that we can apply for, and the candidates can then get that. The effect of this is very important. One is that I think it definitely incentivizes regular voters to learn about our state issues, which is something that is a bit mysterious to a lot of people, because now we actually have some skin in the game as far as some money that we can give to people that we find are in line with our views. The other thing is that it enables a candidate, a small candidate particularly, maybe a more independent candidate, and a political outsider, or someone new to the process, to run a viable campaign without having to solicit large corporations, large political action committees, particular lobbyists, or large unions and things like that. They can actually appeal to more regular individual voters and fund their campaign through those means. Whereas right now it's more a question of which millionaire or billionaire would you get to support you, why, and then also different corporate interests you would need to get their backing from in order to run a viable campaign. So I really think that that's a pretty watershed effect that it could have on politics at our state level. Essentially, it pushes candidates to focus less on the big campaign donors and more time listening to voters and their views to appeal to them in the process. Now, how does this get funded, right? $150 as a credit, a tax credit. Aren't we in a bit of a budget crunch? Yeah, we definitely are. There's a loophole that has existed in the state of Washington for many, many, many years. Essentially, non-residents are exempt from paying our sales tax. Okay, we're one of only 6 states, I think, in the union that still has this tax loophole. So, as part of this I-1464 initiative, it would close that loophole. So, no longer people from out of state are they exempt from paying our sales tax. That would generate about $30 million in extra revenue, okay, which is more than enough to pay for the measures in this initiative. That's essentially 1/1000th of our state budget. Our state budget is roughly $30 billion. This would be $30 million. So the benefit of that, obviously, I think we would have better politics, better policy making, but also spending 1/1000th of your budget in order to create oversight and transparency in how the rest of that money is spent is quite a worthwhile thing. So that's definitely a conversation to be had about, tax loopholes and things like that, which we can talk about more later. But anyway, that is the funding mechanism for this initiative, and the big benefit is that it empowers small donors. Okay, so we've got increased transparency, empowering small donors, and then thirdly is that it reduces the potential for corruption. It addresses some issues in lobbying that are needed. One is that it prevents improper influence by lobbyists or public contractors and reduces the amount of money that they can give directly to political candidates. Specifically, if you're a contractor doing more than $100,000 of business, or you are applying to do more than $100,000 of business with the state of Washington as a contractor, you are essentially limited finally limited in donating to candidates because there could be an influence there. Okay, it limits the incentive for policymakers to then give back gratitude to contractors, the people who award public contracts and spend our public taxpayer money. It eliminates the influence that those actual contractors can have in the political process. Okay. Also, it stops the revolving door between government and lobbying. This initiative would directly establish a 3-year waiting period on former elected officials going back to lobby their old colleagues. Essentially, there's an argument to be made that now in Olympia there are a fair number of legislators. I don't know about a fair number. I don't know of any of them individually, but a lobbying job is a very good job to have. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing it versus, essentially the teacher's salary that you make as a legislator in the House or the Senate. The incentive to then go immediately into lobbying if you lose an election or if you retire and then start to lobby your former colleagues is quite the incentive. And it's a bit of a problem when you have, the influence that lobbyists can then garner over legislators to potentially offer them a job, next year, in terms of what kind of gratitude can be expected for those types of things. Okay, quid pro quos are generally not good for transparent democracy, and the lobbying revolving door certainly is one of those. This would eliminate that. Okay, this also deters illegal coordination between candidates and super PACs, because it strengthens some existing enforcement standards and it increases penalties. So moving on to the fourth aspect of this initiative. So we've got increased transparency, empowering small donors, reducing potential for corruption, and strengthening enforcement. This would toughen the ethics and campaign finance law enforcement by imposing stricter penalties on those who break them. Specifically, this would make individuals who violate campaign finance laws personally liable for their actions, not something where they could hide behind the company or organization that they work for. And it also prohibits candidates or committees from simply using the campaign contributions to pay any penalties or fines. Okay, so if you get penalized or fined for improperly raising funds, you are not able to use those funds that you improperly raised to pay the fine for doing that activity. Okay, so there's a lot of logic behind that type of enforcement mechanism, and we believe that would definitely deter people from wanting to do that in the first place. Okay, it also creates a hotline for reporting violations, and that again would be funded under the sales tax loophole that we would eliminate. Okay, so it's called the Integrity Washington Initiative, Clean Up Politics in Washington, I-1464. Here's what it looks like. Okay, pretty standard. There's a summary of the initiative on the front of it. This is where you get the signatures. We'll get over 300,000 of these. On the back is also some more information to summarize it. Now, here's one thing. Corruption's a complex issue, right? And this initiative addresses quite a few different areas of corruption and policymaking and voting and elections. So, sorry, trying to get this a little more clear. There's a lot of small print, right? This is not going to lie. There's a lot of words here. There's a lot to this law in terms of the nuts and bolts and the specifics of it. So, certainly people are free to read it on the street when you're getting signatures for it, but just be aware that there's a lot of language in it. But the reason that is the case is because, again, corruption's a complex issue. It's not really just one thing. And this is a comprehensive means of addressing something that's extremely important that affects all of our lives. And the results of this initiative, if it passes, when it passes later this year, is that we will potentially have more participation in our state level democracy and better policy making and better use of existing public funds, which is something that we think is extremely important. So you're encouraged to go to integritywashington.org. This is an initiative that is being sponsored and spearheaded by several nonprofits. One of them is Represent Us, and there are Republican and Democrat interest groups as well that are both coming together in a bipartisan effort to pass this initiative and to get the signatures needed. But again, July 8th is our deadline, and we will be collecting over 300,000 signatures in order to get this on the ballot in November. I-1464, Clean Up Politics in Washington. Again, my name's Eric Sullivan. I'm with Ballard for Bernie. This is not a Bernie-specific initiative at all. But anybody who has questions, please contact us, Ballard, 4, Bernie@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook at Ballard for Bernie. And we'd be happy to talk to you more about it. We're going to be doing some training events in Seattle to get people more familiar with it and to hopefully get some signature gatherer volunteers involved. It's a very exciting process here, and it's a very new process. And one last thing is that this, of course, is not the WAMEND initiative, which already is going to be on the ballot in the fall. That would be a constitutional convention to overturn the Citizens United ruling. Okay, that's an important initiative too. That's already going to be on the ballot. This is not it. This addresses specific issues at our state level in our policymaking, not a part of Washington's role in a state constitutional convention. Okay, so that's one thing that's important. Again, I-1464, Clean Up Politics in Washington, the Integrity Washington Initiative. Thanks so much for watching this.